Ahoy! It is easy to get to level 65 in New World now, but it can be quite confusing what to do after and what to prioritize. Today I want to specifically talk about what I think are the most important things that you should be doing on a consistent basis in New World, the dailies, the weeklies, and everything that is most rewarding, whereas I think many other things can simply be skipped, like for example normal ECRs, normal elite chest runs. We're gonna have a few different sections for gearing, for gold, and for weeklies and so on, starting with the daily 725 gear score grind. The first of those is the Cutlass Keys chest run. This is not over here in the free-for-all PvP zone, it's instead down here. Most of you will be familiar with this. You start at the Salty Island Shrine, you kind of just move around here in whichever way you want to, and do a 20 to 30 minute loop, and you can do an additional loop up to the Crow's Nest Lighthouse. If you're doing just the run down here, it's around 500 doubloons, and usually it's advertised in chat as XCK or plus CK. Before we get any deeper into the video, I just posted a very interesting farming tip for a ton of gold in a very short amount of time on my Patreon, so if you're interested in that, then consider supporting me there. What's worth keeping in mind is that if you want to farm doubloons fast, you don't have to limit yourself to doing this once per day. I've tested this, and if you're doing the elite chest run, just the South Islands without the lighthouse, and you do it after you've already done the elite chests, so you're just clearing the normal caches, the non-elite chests, you still get around 300 doubloons, and you can do this once per hour. This can be helpful if you're, for example, trying to farm towards the named items and you can only play on the weekend. The main chest you want to be buying here is the Goldcursed Epic crate, which can roll up to 725, though it is somewhat RNG in terms of perks. You can also buy this crate, the Goldcursed Rare crate. I'm not buying this for the gear score items in there anymore because they can only go up to 705, but I think the resources are actually quite useful, which is also true for the refined resources crate, pretty cheap materials here. However, if you're working towards 725, you may also need chromatic seals from the faction shop. There are other ways to get chromatic seals. You can get them through the raid or you can get them through events, but since currently there's no event on and the raid is not accessible for everyone, the chromatic seal from the faction shop is sometimes the only option you have. In order to get there, I would recommend doing 3 faction missions per day because you have the triple reward bonus for the first 3 missions. You can do the normal PvP missions because they're usually the quickest and easiest to do, but it is worth keeping in mind that especially expedition missions sometimes give a lot of gold as well. You see the Gorgon's raid here gives around 300 gold or coins on the first 3 quests. Slightly less here in Barnacles, but often the PvE quests are very worth it, and if you're doing an expedition anyways, then these can be a valuable choice. As a little bonus, you can also do the quests in Cutlass Keys, and in my opinion most of them take too long and aren't really efficient, but this quest here in particular that you can pick up at Chili Duffy, right here in the center of town, brings you down to the lighthouse and requires you to loot crates there. So if you happen to do a lighthouse run anyways, where you're going to loot the crates there, then you might as well pick up this quest for some extra rewards. Now let's move over to the weekly activities. One thing you want to do once per week is buying the glittering gold key, so you can open one of the chests along the edge of the free-for-all PvP zone, pretty much just around here, I think at this pillar, that you can open for 500 coins that no one can take from you. Additionally, you will have to head into the PvP zone as well and find one of the chests to get your Goldcursed coconut. Next up on the weekly checklist, the Cache of Golden Matter. This only applies if you don't have any trade skills maxed out in order to be able to craft matrices yet. This gives you 1500 gold and 250 dark matter, so this is especially useful in the beginning when you don't have the trade skills and you maybe have more use for dark matter still. Later on, you're probably getting more value out of the gypsum orbs in other ways, especially on fresh start standard servers. If you have the option to and you can find a team, then I would highly recommend doing the raid weekly as well, but I understand that is not an option for everyone. The additional rewards here are very useful, and this is the only way to get gear crafted with exactly the perks that you like. However, in order to do that, you also need a ton of gold. I will mention it here just so it's not being brought up in the comments. There is also the weekly OPR or arena cache that you have a small chance to get, but seeing what people have gotten out of that, it's not even guaranteed legendary and not really guaranteed to be 725. It's just not really worth the hassle if you don't already play those modes anyways. Moving on to more general farms, we have of course artifacts. If there is something specific that you want to have in your build, then you want to farm the right mob for that, especially because artifacts can be upgraded to 725 as well. However, named gear, even though it's limited to 700, isn't inherently useless or bad. Some gear comes with perks that outclass 725 gear score, so it's worth hunting for that as well and then upgrading it at the gypsum kiln. Especially while you're still gearing up, it can often also be cheaper to put a perk on a named item. I'm using the example of the chopper here, which is actually 725, but the same applies for many armor pieces if you need a specific weapon perk. Those perks can be quite expensive on the trading post at 700, but I wanted a Great Axe with Enfeebling Maelstrom, and the chopper here allowed me to just put that on there. So I could, for example, take this piece and put Insatiable Grafwell on it, and it would probably be cheaper than most of the options I could find on the trading post. And speaking of the trading post, that is where the real gold is made. That could be a whole video by itself, but what if you're like me and you just burned most of your gold on leveling trade skills? There are options. The first one are the concealed vaults that you get from caches. Not an insane amount of gold, but since you can get 3 per day, you get sometimes around 150-ish gold per, which is not terrible. If there are any events on, often those will be a way to get extra gold. But then more importantly, you get bonus gold for running random expeditions. You go up here to activities, and then you just go on the expeditions, you click random here, and it'll throw you into a random normal expedition, which will be very easy. Which gives you a cache that gives you 750 coins. This value here is wrong. I don't know why it says 125. In addition to that, you can get the tank bonus, which will give you another 250 gold, or the same thing if you're playing healer. You have to fulfill some conditions, but it's pretty easy. If you do 3 of those per day, that's a very easy 3000 gold. You can see here, these are the 750 ones. And then these are the 250 bonus ones, and you also get some faction tokens along the way. The same thing can be done for mutator expeditions. Here you get 1000 gold from the mutator cache, and then another 500 for the roll bonus. If you have unlocked a higher mutation level than the one you're about to play, you will also get an additional carry bonus cache with another 100 gold. So in total you can make 1600 gold from a run, and you have 2 of those per day, so 3200 in total. Takes a while longer than the normal expeditions though, so less efficient in that regard. On the other hand, the other rewards that you get there will have more value overall. If you want a little bit more gold, you can do the daily major breach caches. There's something very important to note here. You can actually go to Murkgard, and if it's up, you can do 5 portals here. You can see that right now they're not up, but there are 5 caches here. Or you can do a portal run wherever really, as long as it's for the major caches. And then you can just stash them in your storage. I just pulled 2 out of my storage. I had a couple in there. And you can just open 2 per day. And as long as you're only opening 2, you will get the bonus reward, the lost stack of coins. And you can just space that out, so you only really need to do corrupted runs like once or twice per week if you want to. This is an additional 250 coin per bag here. However, you also get corrupted lodestone if you're lucky, or at least work towards it, which are usually a nice extra sum. I think on my server they're going for around 400 coin at the moment. If you're in the crafting business and you want to make matrices, then I would also highly recommend doing a few extra stops. The first one here being the 5 daily gypsum orb that you can craft at the Well of Fortune, which is very cheap here with only 10 mystic doubloons. And in addition to that, you want to hop over to your faction vendor because here you can get another 5 gypsum orbs. You have 2 of them on the alchemist tier here, and then another 3 on the magus tier, or whatever the equivalent of your faction is. If you can spend just a little bit more, you can also make a topaz attunement potion, which will allow you to get even more gypsum in the day relatively easy. If you're planning to do any crafting or refining to make more gold, I would always recommend checking the fort in Weaver's Fen, because this gives you a global refining yield bonus of 10%. If you can, I would avoid doing any refining without that. This bonus is just massive for the overall resource you're getting, and it helps with leveling, crafting, or refining rather, a lot. Just in case they get brought up, solo trials, in my opinion, are not really worth doing. The time spent can be spent better, considering they don't really give a lot of gold on just a little bit of dark matter. Of course, there are various other ways to progress, but I believe these ones are the most important ones. If this was helpful, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you want to get more tips, specifically trading tips to make more gold, then consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks all for my patrons who already do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Sloth, out.